look, thank you everybody for joining us. I'll introduce you to Elijah very shortly. But just while we're waiting for people to come in, I'll just do an acknowledgement of country. Would obviously want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the many, many lands on which we're meeting today. Pay our respect to elders past and present. Um, as we gather virtually from different parts of the country, I invite each of you to take a moment to reflect on the traditional owners of the land where you are today. Okay, so very quickly, Fergal Coleman is my name. I'm a co-founder and CRO here at Symphony 3, as most of you will know. I think we've kind of got a group of us who get together for these AI pollinators every so often. Just in terms of housekeeping, I suppose we'll be recording this session, so please let us know if we've got any issues with that. Tip of the day, we'll talk about a few tips as we go through, and we're going to ask Elijah to give us some of his tips very shortly. We'll obviously jump in and get the view of AI at the City of Bunbury with Elijah. We'll do that for about 25, 30 minutes, including maybe some questions as we go. We'll then jump out and do a demonstration. We're going to show you an early view of the Mournable Parking Infringement Review Agent and talk a little bit also about some of the guardrails that are hidden in there behind the agent as well. So I'll have Sarah Jane, who I think is online, join us to do that demo. And depending on how we go for time, we can take questions at the end. So happy to stay on for the full hour if there's questions, or not, let you guys away to get your lunch and get on with the day. So I guess the important thing is any question is a good question. Any feedback is good feedback. So please use the chat box and the Q&A section to put in your questions and your comments. We're all here to learn together. So without a little bit about Symphony 3 for those of you who are new, established in 2011, very much dedicated to local government. So we've delivered over 120 local government projects in that period. Integration, API, data, and obviously now AI is core to what we do. It's our core business. We've got about 40 plus council clients that are on our platform, and we work very closely with those councils to help them with their digital enablement and really to deliver better services to the community using some of the best technology available today. So with that, I might welcome Elijah. Elijah is the Manager of Information Services at the City of Bunbury, and he's going to take us through what the City of Bunbury have been up to with AI over the last 12 months or so. How are you, Elijah?
Yeah, well, thanks, Fergal. Thanks for having me.
And look, thank you very much for giving up your time and coming to talk to us. Very excited to hear what you have to say. I'll hand over to you if you want to throw up some slides. I'll take some questions as we go, and if I can think of anything smart to say or any good questions to ask you as you go through the session, I'll endeavour to do so.
Sounds good. Thanks, Fergal. As long as they're not too spicy. Those slides coming through on your end?
Yeah, you can see it loud and clear. All good.
Great. So just a little bit about sort of our journey in what we've done in AI at the City of Bunbury. And overall, I'll touch on some of the lessons we've learned at the end, but overall, we sort of the key thing I think we've learned is that the greatest risk is doing nothing. That's one thing we've tried to share with our executive team, our councillors, but also other local governments that we've spoken with. So hopefully you get something out of our journey, and you can learn something from it. But a little bit about City of Bunbury. Some of you that aren't from WA might not even have heard of Bunbury. I know before I moved over here, I didn't have a clue where it was, and when I first moved over, I thought it was just part of Perth. So we're about 2 hours south of Perth. The city itself serves a population of about 34,000 people. But the sort of the greater Bunbury area, which is comprised of a number of other LGAs, I think it's well over 70, probably pushing 100 these days. So we run about 450 staff, about 300 FTE that serve our community. From a digital capability perspective, roughly 3 years ago, we developed or stood up what we call our Centre of Excellence, which was a first for the City of Bunbury to have in-house development capability. It wasn't something we had before, other than a few very clever IT service desk technicians tinkering with things. But then when they leave, we're left with sort of the inability to maintain it. So I came on board about 3 years ago, sort of with the Centre of Excellence really sort of cranking up, and we developed a team. So we've got a team of roughly 5 now that are data specialists and software developers, which we found really beneficial. We've been able to stand up ways of working within the business to be able to streamline that process and make sure that if our developers do move on, that we're easily able to onboard new talent and continue innovating. But one of the things that we sort of decided with that Centre of Excellence is that we really wanted to try and stay at the forefront of technology. We noticed through looking at our business and also chatting with other local governments that often local government was a good chunk behind sort of industry. And so we wanted to try and change that narrative. And I wish I could sit here and say we have. It's only been 3 years, and it's been a bit of a battle, but I feel like we're making progress. So then,
in terms of that, Elijah, sorry to interrupt you, but attracting that talent and those developers, any tips in terms of how you attract people and
live in a city with beaches that look like that. It's definitely not easy. I think we've been able to find most of ours because they like the compromise of like lifestyle and the benefits you get from local government. So living in a smaller town that has the beaches, no traffic, but still the benefits of a big city. But then working for a local government where they can work 9 to 5, go home, and they don't need to worry. So that's sort of how we've been able to attract and retain talent. I wish we could say we had unlimited money to just hire whoever we wanted, but we've been pretty lucky so far.
And what about the driver for delivering public good and public value? Is that something that you embrace and talk up? Delivering services to people in the community is something I often think is very undervalued as a driver, I suppose, for people to take a job in local government. You can see the outcomes that you deliver in the community.
Yeah, I mean, it probably wasn't something we tapped into a whole lot at the start, but it's definitely something we've used to motivate the team and keep them on track since. When we first started, we were very much like focused on internal tooling, but we've had the opportunity to work on a few external facing projects, which the team gets really excited, and most of the team are ratepayers as well. So they like to see that sort of value delivered there for the community. So then sort of November 2022 rolls around and we see ChatGPT sort of first come out, and immediately the sort of tech team really started embracing it, mostly writing things and poems and songs and stuff like that, and starting to use it to code. We know GPT 3.5 left a little bit to be desired in that space, but it was still pretty mind-boggling what it could achieve. And so, but then we quickly sort of found out that there were other people within the business using it. And when we sort of had that discussion, we found that there's probably the need for us to have a policy around the use of generative AI, because first of all, there were lots of tools coming into the market. We don't know where lots of the data with those tools are going, and those more public tools like ChatGPT were quite open about the fact that you're putting in your data and it's going to then use that data to train future models. And so we worked on developing a policy. We really wanted to make sure though that policy enabled staff, empower them to be able to use the tools that would make their job better, and not inhibit that. But we wanted to make sure that it was done in a safe way. So we sort of had two aspects to our policy because we have that internal development team. So that first aspect was the use of public AI tools and how you can do that safely, what you can and can't put into public AI tools, which tools you could and couldn't use. But we kept that like quite specific. And then we also addressed the internal AI and how we would go about developing solutions that use AI. We tried where possible, for example, to include remaining model agnostic, so that if OpenAI is a bubble that pops, we can easily swap to a different model. Heaven forbid something happens to AWS, we could end up in another provider. And then how we sort of the security and framework around that. Sorry, Fergal.
Yeah, those frameworks and just putting in that groundwork is really an important first step. I know Sarah Jane and Alana here did a workshop recently with Victorian governments, and there's still a lot of councils that haven't, is my understanding, got their policies and their basic frameworks in place. So good to see that you started with the foundations.
Yeah, I think we're probably at the point now where we need to review it, just with the pace at which AI is changing and the team are developing.
Yeah.
But we'll get around to that shortly. Maybe January will provide some reprieve from the busyness. Yeah, so then once we had a policy in place, well, kind of in parallel, really, we started working on a plan, and we sort of because we're in the middle of a budget cycle, we didn't have any money. Not that we have money when we're at any point in the budget cycle, and we didn't have any resourcing because we were already working on some fairly major digital transformation. So we weren't able to just sort of put tools down and focus on AI and put all our money there, because we saw that's where there was going to be benefit, because we'd already made commitments to deliver other things for the business. So we put together what we thought would be pretty lean for us to be able to do it with limited resources. And what that looked like for us was creating an AI task force, so a group of champions from across the business that would be able to help us, I guess, disseminate the good word of AI and sort of become that group that people can turn to when they're stuck, or whether they're wanting some tips or tricks. We quickly sort of ended up the task force turning into two tiers. So we have what we called like the primary task force and the extended task force. So the primary task force has some, and I'll touch on it later, some delegated decision-making responsibility from the ICT board. So that we meet fortnightly, and we're able to make decisions and move relatively quick with tools that people want to try out and test out. And then the extended task force is sort of our training ground, testing ground, and network of champions.
Any particular makeup in there in terms of, was it a volunteer task force? Was there a call put out to people to join? And kind of what's the demographic?
Yeah. So we've had a handful of people leave, but initially we had representation from every team across the city. So what we first did was we went round to all of the team meetings. So we split up sort of amongst our group of technology experts, myself, and some people from our sort of business analyst sort of programs team. And we went out to all of the team meetings and just shared like a 10-minute spiel about what AI is, giving them some caution to be careful, because we wanted to get onto that pretty quick. Chances are they weren't going to read our policy when we sent it out, but we wanted to make sure they weren't putting things into ChatGPT and things that they shouldn't be. And then we sort of ended that meeting with, all right, nominate who you want from your team to be part of the task force, essentially. So then we kind of ended up from that with a list of 30 odd people that we put into the task force, and sort of got that group from there. And generally speaking, it was the ones that were in that meeting saying, oh yeah, I've used it for this, I've used it for that, and asking lots of questions. And it was a perfect sort of segue to get them on board. Right. We then saw the need to have a secure staff chatbot. I've referenced obviously ChatGPT, and we were encouraging people to use Copilot at the time, but we found that it left a lot to be desired as far as its performance and capabilities, at least the sort of free version, I suppose, that came with our Microsoft licensing. And so we wanted to make sure that we had somewhere that staff could use for anything that they wanted. And then from there, it just kind of goes into a recurring cycle. of training, continuing to utilize the AI task force to champion initiatives, decide what the needs are of the business, and continue to sort of spread that across the org. And then solution design, we were conscious of not wanting to seek out opportunities to implement AI, but and also the fact that we didn't have any resourcing to do that, but rather look to include it in any problems that we were solving, any solutions that we're designing. We just kept an eye open for any opportunities for AI to play in that space. Very importantly, and our policy touches on pretty much all of this, is just around the security and governance. There were some non-negotiables for us. We wanted our data to stay in Australia, and that included our inference. There are some exceptions to the inference happening in Australia, but for the most part, we wanted that to be the reality. We wanted to, and it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but I referenced it before, we wanted to be able to leverage AI for sensitive information. And that's where that data sort of security and sovereignty really plays a big part. We felt like, yes, we could give our staff the access to be able to, write an email or write a public-facing document, but we also wanted to give them the ability to use AI to analyze financials or other things that are potentially more sensitive in nature.
So give us an example of kind of how sensitive does the information get, and kind of what are the guardrails you've got around that sensitive information? Or is that a fair question?
Yeah. So with our with the chatbot that I'll touch on when we talk about the solutions, because the data all stays in Australia or within our AWS tenancy, we've essentially given people free rein. So do whatever you want. We do recommend they don't do anything incriminating, because we can obviously check the chat history. But I guess at the end of the day, that's up to them. So yeah, we've got people sort of analysing our financials, analysing PI, like things that have PII in it. We don't necessarily need to redact it, because it's all remaining secure and in our control. I alluded to it briefly before. The ICT board did allow sort of the AI task force to make a certain amount of decisions. So we really sort of wrap that around sort of that, I guess, micro SaaS type tooling situation. So for example, some of the things we have tried are like video tools to help with creating our onboarding process, streamlining that, or like some documentation tools where there's an opportunity, and traditionally we might need to go to the ICT board to sort of seek their permission for it. Our ICT board only happens every 2 months, to be honest. The exec don't know what we're talking about half the time. And so they sort of decided that the AI task force would be able to make those decisions and run the pilots, and start to distribute it, as long as we follow the process where we sort of get a key group to trial it for a period of time before we make it more widely available within the organization. So that's been really beneficial, because we know that AI and the tools and stuff iterate at a very rapid rate. And so we've been able to try and keep up with that, which has been great. Then what we've done sort of in the training space so far, we saw this as a big sort of initial training to be able to get the organization up to a basic level of literacy around AI. So we took a hands-on, top-down approach. So what that looked like for us was we ran a full day training session for directors, managers, and EAs. Initially, we looked at outsourcing that to some training providers, but we felt like we could run that in-house. And I actually spoke to our account manager at AWS, Ellie, who I think might even be on the webinar.
We've got Ellie here today, so
yeah, shout out to Ellie. And she jumped on board, got some people from AWS to come help us with the training as well. So I think at the end of the day, it was probably 50-50. We ran some sessions, they ran some sessions, and it was really good to have that sort of expertise in the room. And the feedback that we got from our executive and managers was that it's the best training they'd ever been on. Which was great, because that kind of excitement they were able to build, we put a lot of effort into it, a lot of snacks into it as well, was then kind of filtered down within the organization. So those managers and directors then were sort of championing that with their staff members, so that when we started running the training for them, we were getting quite good attendance. So we ran a session sort of shortly after that. We condensed the session from a full day into a 2-hour session, because we realized that staff didn't have A, the attention spans, and B, the luxury. So we ran a 2-hour task force session, and then they helped as well then to spread that good word. And then we ran staff sessions. So we ran it across the org. I don't know off the top of my head, I can't remember, but we ran something like 12 sessions, I think it was, across the organization, including going out to some of our facilities. And we were able to train about 50% of the org, or roughly 70% of our desk workers, which was really positive. And that really sort of focused. We did touch on ethics and policy, and some of that important security stuff around AI. But we've spent the bulk of the session just working on prompting and being hands-on, and allowing them to sort of get a feel for the tool.
Any tips for other councils who are listening in terms of training? Like, what are any key things that came out of that made one of the most successful training days? Like, what was it that people really liked about it? Was it the hands-on nature? Was it new information?
Yeah, I think definitely like the excitement of it being something new. And we try to, like, across all our presenters and the group that were involved, we tried to maintain that excitement throughout the day, and probably, like, to a degree, overplayed that excitement a bit. I mean, we're not actors. I'm not good at that, but I think that worked out really positively. And then I think the hands-on nature, where they were like, yes, we might spend an hour talking about ethics, but then the next hour and a half, they were working on generating images, or writing proposals, or whatever it was. And I think we did our best to tie it into work situations, but without it directly being work. For example, we did an exercise at the end of the day, where the managers had to work on proposals, and they were agents for NBA players. And then the executive were owners of an NBA team. And yes, that's not directly what we do for work, but we do very similar things when we present concept briefs to our executive, for them to then analyze to decide whether projects should move forward or not. And so we kept it work related, but still fun and exciting. So that's probably my one tip.
Right.
So you're probably sitting there going, that's all good. You've done a bunch of training and policy and plan and stuff, but what have you actually done? So these are some of the solutions that we've got in place, or we've developed and ready to go, and pending the business adoption. So at the time, actually, and this is sort of where that AI plan around that sort of continuous loop allowed us to incorporate it into one of the solutions we were working on. So we were working on a community portal that we developed in-house, and we saw at the time that we could incorporate a public-facing AI chatbot into that. And so we essentially trained the chatbot across our website and some additional knowledge-based articles, for us to then have a chatbot that the public could then access. Open Web UI, that was the tool we ended up using, and you can see a screenshot there, a very small screenshot of what that looks like. It's very similar to ChatGPT, but it's an open source solution, so that allowed us to remain model agnostic and hook it up to any provider we wanted. So like I said, we used models on AWS Bedrock, predominantly the Claude models, and that can keep all our data secure. And they've got some really good functionality in there, and it's continuing to grow. We then have worked on a content manager integration with AWS knowledge base. So that way we can allow the business to maintain the knowledge base for internal AI agents. So they can just go in and enter sort of the doc numbers for the documents in Content Manager, and then we've created that integration to pull the latest version of that document and put it into the vector database in the knowledge base. And then we've been able to do that so it syncs, it checks on a regular basis to make sure we have the latest version, or if there's a new version. And that's good, because then we're not having to maintain, like we might then end up with version 4 in Content Manager, version 3 is still in the knowledge base, and the business then means that our AI agents don't have the latest data. Because of that integration, we're able to keep that constantly up to date. The record classifications and cursor/goose is probably stuff it's not quite there, but we've been working quite heavily on it. So the record classification is just around a generative AI tool to be able to help us to classify our documents accurately. So we find that across the business, it's not done consistently or well, and sometimes not at all, which is probably not news to anyone, but quite disappointing and unfortunate. And so we've been working on a tool that will allow people to essentially drag and drop a document into a tool that will then say, this is where it should belong in our content management system. And then
what's your document management system?
Trim Content Manager.
Yep. Okay, good.
So then with the click of a button, it will then put that document into Content Manager for you, provided everything looks right to you. And that what we'll also be able to do with that is not just make it available to the end users, but we've also got some network drives and some legacy systems that we need to clean up. So we're gonna harness the power of that to be able to do it. We've actually purchased some hardware to be able to run that in-house, just because of the volume. We determined that would be more cost effective, and it also adds a small additional layer of security, because it's never leaving our network, and there's a lot of documents there with a lot of PII.
Just wondering if there's any questions that people want to ask about these solutions. I've got a few, but I don't want to be the only one asking questions related to these tools. Throw them into the chat bot, and I'm sure Elijah will give it a crack. I've got one. Sorry, I hope I haven't cut you off, Elijah. But the public AI chatbot, how are you managing? That's public. There's no human in the loop when that goes out to the public. How do you have disclaimers on there if it's pulling up not quite accurate information? Is it pulling up accurate information given you're just training it on your own websites, or does it still kind of hallucinate?
Yeah, we did quite thorough testing initially when we first, and it's got some pretty good guardrails in place so that it is pulling accurate information. But we do also have a disclaimer alongside it, just to sort of clarify that yes, it is AI and it can make mistakes. But to be honest, I think we've had it live for nearly 2 years now, and I don't think we've had any feedback of it producing inaccurate information. We did have obviously in testing, we had a situation where our mayor has a Spanish-sounding surname, and so if you asked it who the mayor was, it started speaking Spanish in the next response. So that was interesting. More of a feature than a bug, though, I think.
Yeah, and are you noticing a transition to people just using the chatbot as opposed to using the website? You know, have you observed any trends in there?
We probably haven't tracked it to the degree that we should. It has had a fair bit of use, but the website's also. I don't think the use of the website has declined much at all. So it's probably more of a novelty, I think, at this point in time.
I've got a question here about the cost of running these solutions, and I guess they're all cost differently. But let's say the Open Web UI, it's an open source solution. You've thrown it up on AWS, I believe, probably using EC2 and S3 buckets for data, etc. What kind of costs are you seeing? Is it more expensive, less expensive than you thought? Have you got any? Can you shed any light on that, I suppose, in terms of?
Yeah, I don't have a specific cost breakdown, but I can throw out some estimates. So we're just hosting it on EC2. The database for it is in Aurora, I believe, and that's the highest cost, I think, for most of our services is normally the database. But at a guess, it's probably costing us about $500 a month to run. And then the inference, the best part about that is that we only pay for what we use. So anything we're paying for as far as consumption of the models is benefit for the organization. So instead of licensing all of our users for $40, $50 a month, we just know that any consumption we do use is stuff that's been used.
And I think that's a very important consideration for organizations that are certainly embarking on this. You know, you can get yourself tied up in large numbers of licensing fees very quickly if you're trying to onboard lots of users.
Yeah, definitely true. I just wanted to touch on finally was sort of a pilot that we're running at the moment. So the development team themselves have been using Cursor for coming up on a year now. For those of you who don't know, Cursor's a agentic coding tool, which is it's a fork of VS Code, and it allows you to, as much or as little as you want, allow AI to write your code and review your code. Um, so they use it very much human in the loop.
Mm.
They're all software developers, so they know what's happening and they keep a close eye on it. But we source the benefits of because like I'm not on the tools anymore. I do get on the tools, but normally the team tell me to get off. Um, but I saw benefits in using Cursor for sort of some of the tasks that I needed to achieve around data analysis or putting together reports or business cases and things like that. Where it's just that having that agentic capability was just a step better than having a raw chatbot in Open Web UI. And so we've actually expanded that pilot to a handful of people outside of our department to let them have a go. And we've seen some really positive initial benefits from them. For example, one of the guys from our strategic planning, they also cover risk and project reporting, saw that some of their reports that they were running on a monthly basis, they could get down from 3 or 4 days to about 3 or 4 minutes using a tool like this to be able to analyze the data and put together the report, which obviously not everything you're going to see that dramatic increase in efficiency. But even if we just have a handful of processes across the business, you can understand that would quickly add up. And Goose is and it's an open source solution actually developed by Block, who makes Square. Really runs locally on the machine. It's agentic, can do all that same sort of stuff that Cursor can do, but it's got a cleaner front end for people that aren't developers. It's literally a chat interface, but it has that same sort of capability and allows us to continue to remain model agnostic as well. So we're piloting both of those at the moment to see how they pan out.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so last slide, just a couple of key lessons that we've learned. I think the key thing with AI, and to be honest, I feel like this is probably a key thing across technology in general at the moment because it's just going to continue to accelerate, is the need to transition instead of transform. We hear a lot about digital transformations, and I think they're probably really good to get you to a certain point. But I think if you're doing a digital transformation, it's important to architect that in a way that you're then able to continue to develop and transition as the technologies change instead of waiting another 10 years for the next digital transformation because you're going to get left behind. Staying flexible is really important. We've seen things work, we've seen things fail, and not being flexible means we wouldn't have been able to achieve what we have achieved so far. So that's definitely a key thing that we've learned. I touched on security and privacy. Very important for us in anything that we do. Is making sure that they're right and set the way they need to be set. And then, like any sort of digital project, just the time that change needs and bringing the business along. We adopted sort of very early on. In fact, I think it's outlined in our plan that we feel it's sort of our responsibility as an employer to upskill our staff with new technologies. And we think AI is definitely sort of the topic of conversation in that regard at the moment. So we're trying to bring the organization along with us on that one, but it's a process. Even looking at stats recently, yes, we've got all these great tools available, but people still aren't using them as much as we'd like to see. So just trusting the process and trying some different things in that regard.
I think as human beings, we can only move so fast, and these tools are moving so quickly for all of us. It's just very difficult for us to keep up, I think,
Yeah,
across
yeah,
the board.
definitely agree. So yeah, that's a little bit about us and what we've done at the City of Bunbury.
Great, thanks, Elijah. I'll what I might do is we might keep going and I'll get people to hold their questions. I do have some more questions for you, but we might jump on and we'll have a look at the City of Warrnambool app that we wanted to show to people, and then maybe we might have a few minutes at the end to kind of have a bit of a discussion with yourself, Sarah Jane, and myself, if that works for you.
Sounds good.
Great. Okay. Well, look, I might share my window again. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. Welcome, Sarah. You're on mute, I think.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. So we're going to demonstrate the parking infringement review agent that is currently been tested by Stephen. I think you're on the line here and your team at Warrnambool. We want to give people a sneak preview and I guess show where things are going. Certainly moving very much as Elijah alluded to from I guess the early chatbot AI age into agentic very 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 quickly. Couple of things that, again, just to reiterate some of the things you were talking about, Elijah, responsible AI and building council-ready responsible AI is something that's very much important to us as a business, but I guess to every council as well. Um, we are probably all aware of the AI ethics principles, which you can see built in there. As we're going through and building these tools, we're trying to be as aware of these as possible. I guess one of the things we're starting to see is that some of these points and principles are increasingly been built into some of the back end of these tools, and they're foundations that we can put in place as we start building these tools. And again, I think the other thing is that uh, I think there's a real opportunity for us to kind of build these guardrails that are reusable across councils and across applications and agents. So again, similar to Elijah, we're an AWS user, so we use Agent Core, we use Bedrock, as well as a number of other tools. Increasingly, we're starting to see the guardrails get a lot more sophisticated. I think it's fair to say they're almost becoming drag and drop, Sarah Jane, where we can build things like content filters. We can have, sensitive information filters that pick up on things like PII. So, would it be fair to say that even in the last 12 months, this has improved so in a massive way?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as you said, a lot of it is now drag and drop. You can kind of just set what guardrails you want, and if you don't want a guardrail anymore or you want to add more, then there's various options to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think if you're listening, I think this is one of the takeaways for us. You need to almost start with the guardrails, build the guardrails at the outset. Don't be considering them at the end of the process. Think about it as you're designing the solutions that you're putting together. I've talked about a couple there in the example that Sarah Jane's going to show us. We've got some built in and picking up things like PII, I guess, are obvious ones, Sarah Jane. This is an example from one of our agents where someone puts in their email address and automatically the chatbot says, "Look, the request is blocked. We can't deal with that content because it's been deemed." Oh, we've got the credit card in there as well. It's personal information or it's private information. Okay. With that, we'll talk about the infringement review agent that we've been working with the team at Warrnambool with. Uh, this will be familiar probably to every council out there. People are issued with parking infringement fines, and they have a review application form on their website that I guess they can question the details. So the first step is the requester gets onto the Warrnambool website, submits an application form that gets sent to the document management system, triggers a workflow. They start mounting up. It gets sent to a pool of reviewers, and the reviewers have to physically get in and look at these applications. Often they have to go to 2 or 3 different systems to look at this. They then need to make a decision to approve or confirm. It might get sent back and forth a couple of times, and eventually there's a decision made, and a letter has to be drafted and sent to the requester with the outcome. In a business sense, what this means, it can take, and I think that may be conservative in some cases, 20 to 30 minutes per submission. And the elapsed time can vary from weeks to months. So I know Warrnambool are starting to hit that busy period as people go down to the beach for the summer holidays, and these can mount up. So it's a challenge for councils, and we think it's a great use case that Stephen and James and team came up with. So the new process that you'll see shortly, that we've still got the requester visiting the website and putting in an application form. It then goes to the infringement agent or the app. It picks up the license, the registration number and the infringement number, and it goes off and reviews information. And I think we've got 3 or 4 different systems. Sarah Jane can confirm that shortly. Looks at that, analyzes that information, comes up with a recommended outcome and action, gives us some supporting evidence on the decision, and drafts a letter automatically to the requester. We still keep a human in the loop, so it goes back to the reviewer. They can have a look at it, and then it can get sent out to the requester. It's currently in testing, but I guess what we see as possible here is that 20 to 30 minutes can get reduced to 2 minutes per submission. And the elapsed time can get reduced to minutes or even seconds from what's weeks or months. So Sarah Jane, I might give you the controls to actually give us a sneak preview of this.
Thanks, Fergal. Can you see my screen okay?
No, we can see you though.
Oh,
It's great.
let's see.
Well, Sarah Jane's getting ready. Please feel free again just to pop the questions in, and I'll pick them up as we go.
I can see your screen.
Yeah. Okay.
You can, I can't. Jeannie, Mike, sorry about that, Sarah Jane.
Hopefully other people can see it.
Julie, can you see Sarah Jane's screen? Yeah. So okay.
Yeah.
You're good. I can't see it, but everybody else can. So
I definitely can see it as well, Fergal.
great.
Okay. Fergal, you'll just have to stick with not seeing it. Okay. Yep. So as Fergal's already talked about, this is the infringement agent, and whenever somebody submits Snap a form for an infringement review, then they can come in here and staff at council can input in the infringement number and the vehicle registration for the infringement that they want to review. This is all powered by Beatrix AI, which is our enterprise solution. And built within our parking infringement agent, we have guardrails, so we don't send any personal information to the model that's reviewing the infringement. At the moment, just for the testing stages, we do have the data input that I talked about, but hopefully moving forward, when we pass that testing phase, this will be an automatic process. So as soon as somebody is to submit a form, the agent will automatically be kicked off, and council staff can come in here and they'll be able to see straight away the reports that the agent has generated overnight or from the past couple of hours. So just in the interest of time, I've already put in some infringement reviews, just using some test data at the moment. In this table, we can see all of the previous reviews. So it gives us just some information about the date, infringement number, vehicle registration, and we also have a status message. And this basically tells us, just gives us a high level overview of whether the infringement review was, the outcome was cancel or if it was stand. And most importantly, what this gives us is two things. So the first one is the outcome letter. And this is basically the template that Warren Ball will use to send the result of the infringement review back to the person who's requested it. And secondly, we have the AI decision. So it's important with agents that we can understand exactly where it's getting the information from, what information it's using, and how it came to its decision. So if we first look at the AI decision, let's have a look. So when you open the AI decision form, you will be able to see some key details for the infringement, so the notice number and the vehicle registration. We also are pulling out the offence date, type, and some officer comments, and that would all come from the system where the parking officer will put in details about the offence. We also pull out information from the form that the appellant will have filled out, and we can see why they filled it out and some of their reasons. If they've included any submissions in the form, we can add the photos into here. So whoever's doing the review of the AI decision, they'll be able to see any photos that are relevant to this submission. In the next table, we'll be able to see the reasoning of the decision. So here it will give us some information about what it's found. It will give us some factual findings. So when the infringement was issued, if there was any similar registrations found in the payment machine, and some legal information. So for example, it will look at the road safety road rules, and it will get any information about the law that the offence relates to. And finally, it will identify any gaps. So if there's any gaps in the decision that it makes, it will highlight those decisions. So for example, in this case, somebody has accidentally put in the wrong registration into the payment machine when they were paying. So if we have a look at the outcome letter for this one, so we pull the data from the form for the details of the person who has submitted this. And most of this is the templated letter that Warren Ball have provided us with. However, part of the form, the AI will fill out. So for example, here it's generated some piece of text to give the person who has submitted the review some information on why why it's been decided to cancel or stand the infringement. And for example, if we look at one of the other ones, we have also a decision here where the fine stands. And in the outcome letter, we use a different template for that. So you'll see here it is a non-cancellation of the infringement. And here we can see the reason why we decided to not cancel that particular fine. One of the important things about this is pretty new, and we want to gather feedback pretty quickly. So whenever staff review these AI decisions, they can provide feedback. So we have a quick feedback loop here, and we can continue to make the whole infringement review more seamless and better. That's me, Fergal.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah Jane. That was very good. Have we got any questions? I think we've got about 5 minutes. So we've got 10 minutes remaining. So I might let me just jump up and put the slides back on. So I think one of the things we're trying to do here, we were doing some figures yesterday. This is a target, but we reckon that could, based on the figures yesterday, we could get 93% reduction in processing time if we get this right. Way to go yet, but I guess the point is, and you alluded to this as well, Elijah, is that there are, if you can find the right use cases that are repetitive and been done on a regular basis, there are some real cost savings and efficiencies to be had in council by these using these agentic tools. Anyone wants to learn more, reach out to us. We're happy to do the demo in a bit more detail for you, or just have a general discussion. So just get in touch. And with that, I might just open it up for 3 or 4 minutes of discussion and questions to hit us to the top to finish out the hour. Sarah Jane, I'm going to talk about data, and I'll open this up to you, Elijah. You might have some thoughts. Getting access to data and having clean data. Would it be fair to say that every agent that we're building is going to depend on good data and access to data?
Yeah, the data is key, especially in the likes of chatbots, where you need to have your most up-to-date documents in your system for the AI to read. So if you have documents that are years old and are superseded by newer documents, the answers that you're going to receive are going to be mixed up with the outdated data and the newer data. So it's really important to keep those types of things up to date, so that it can give the best possible answers and not produce any wrong information.
Elijah, I don't know if you have any comments on that or any thoughts on data, or have any plans in terms of what you're doing with your data to make it AI ready?
Yeah. Well, I mean, data is definitely power, right? Without it, what Sarah Jane alluded to, your chatbots and agents just aren't going to be able to make the most accurate decisions. One thing we're working on at the moment is sort of transitioning our records management team. Traditionally, they've been very much looked at from the business perspective as being like compliance officers, I guess. And so we're trying to shift that narrative within the organization to sort of make it sound like share the narrative that they are sort of the enablers and controllers of our data and our information, and that in that they're going to be the ones that make it possible for us to achieve great things with AI. And so it's really positive for them as a team, but it's also really positive for the organization to be able to understand that, yeah, we can do all these flash and cool things, but we've got to have those foundations right.
So data is one of the things I'm looking for, I suppose, a double pronged question here for both of you. In the last 12 months, I guess, since we've all started playing with these tools in earnest to now, what have been the major changes you've seen and the advances that you've seen? And kind of what do you see as the key things that are going to happen in the next 12 months? That's a question without notice, but give it a crack.
That's a pointed one, right?
Not necessarily.
I think over the last year, if we look at the start of the year, the focus was on chatbots, which a lot of the times you can use public information that's low risk, and you can dip your toes quite well into the world of AI without having too much risk. But I think as this year has passed, we're now looking towards more agentic AI. And I feel that that's where we're going to see the real benefits in workflows, automating those different processes. And I think over the next year, we will see more use cases that will pop up using agentic AI. And even for chatbots, I think we will be able to see this also coming up.
I might go with a controversial take. I agree with what Sarah Jane said, but I think we've seen the models already this year, even just the last couple of weeks with the new Gemini and Opus model from Claude, get better and better. I think we'll continue to see that. And I think what that'll mean for businesses is that vibe coding or custom bits of software are going to become more and more realistic for people to entertain the thought of having those things. And so outside of, yes, you've got those agentic workflows that can automate your process, but you can also have bespoke bits of software to automate your process. But I think having clear frameworks around how you go about that is going to be really important for enterprises.
Pricing, Elijah, I think you touched on it there, and I think that's quite important. I think there's a real fear out there around the cost of AI and what it's going to cost and licensing and things like that. Do you see, you alluded to the pay as you go or the pay per use model. Do you think that's the way councils will go? Do you think that's the way councils should go? Have you got an opinion on that?
Yeah,
Guessing you have to, I'm guessing you have to go to the CEO and ask for money when you put these things in place. So in
well,
terms of
what you're
budgeting,
supposed to do.
yeah.
I actually amend one of my answers before I jumped on our AWS console and had a quick look at what Open Web UI is costing us, and it works out to be about 250 Australian dollars a month
Yeah.
at the moment for the EC2 and the database. Yeah, I don't know. I think we probably won't see many councils adopt that pay as you go option, just because the way lots of councils tend to operate is more around that sort of safe space of what Microsoft suggests and tells them to do. Again, probably controversially, but I think that pay as you go option is right, is more cost effective, I suppose, but it's also maybe a little bit more strenuous to administer, and without some kind of understanding or technical in-house expertise, it becomes probably a little bit difficult for most councils to adopt.
Final question to you, Elijah. I think a good answer there. 12 months time, what's AI going to be doing in the city of Bunbury?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I think we'll probably, hopefully, we'll see the business adopting it a lot more, like a lot more use throughout the organization. I'd like to see some of those like agentic tools being adopted more widely, where people are seeing significant increases in their workflows, and they're coming to us as sort of the technology team on a regular basis, begging for more. And I think we're not going to be able to deliver it because we're limited in our capacity. But I think that cultural shift is something we really want to focus on. And I think as the tools continue to develop, I think we'll see a lot more sort of agents being able to handle tasks that might traditionally be done otherwise. And I think we're already seeing a shift in that sort of agent space to seeing more long-standing agents or long-running agents where they're able to take a task and iterate on it and work on it over the course of a couple of hours, as opposed to a couple of minutes that we're seeing at the moment. So I think that'll shift probably within the organization what we're able to achieve with AI.
I have two questions that came in that I missed, so I'm going to keep going. One here from Bernie. There are several documented cases where guardrails have been disregarded by the agent. Do you have any concerns around this? Well, Sarah Jane, I'm going to have to handball that one to you. You're the one who builds the guardrails, and yeah, have you got any thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, so for the guardrails, they're basically trying to do some sort of matching against what it sees in the question that you ask it. So for example, it tries to match a name and tries to understand, is that a name or is that an email address? And there is times when it can maybe not pick up, a particular name, and in that case, the personal information can still go off to the model. So I feel in these cases, well, for example, with enterprise AI, Elijah kind of touched on it earlier, but it's all within the data sovereignties within Australia, and most of the time it's in your control. So what I would in those cases say is, if you you don't really need to sometimes pass the personal information, so a guardrail can just kind of sit as another layer on top of the information that you pass a model. In the first place, I would try not to send personal information to a agent or model, but more, having the guardrail on top of it blocks any potential for there to be sensitive information that we're sending to a model. In those cases where we do, for example, in the outcome letter that I showed earlier, where it includes the name and the address of people, that none of that information is sent to to the model, so the agent doesn't actually have access into that personal information. So we're just applying the guardrail really as another security net to make sure that if, for example, someone enters it somewhere that we don't expect it to be, that we are covered in that scenario.
And certainly the ones we're playing with these agents are they're internal. There's humans, keeping the human in the loop, I think is it's something that's going to be there for the foreseeable future when there's kind of sensitive information involved that may need to go out externally is kind of my opinion on that, Sarah Jane. I don't know what you guys think.
Yep. I think in these cases, human in the loop will be essential in ensuring that the information that it's given is grounded and correct.
Yeah. There was a final question around the systems that Warrnambool were trying to integrate with. I don't want to call out any particular vendors, Alan, but I will say that interoperability of systems is hugely important to, and you know, you want to be getting systems that you can get access to that have open APIs because, you know, it's that obviously, as we talked about, data is essential to make these systems work. We are working with those providers, but we don't have the API access the way we'd like to just yet. But that's a work in progress. I'm going to leave it at that just because I think we're over time. Just want to say thank you very much first to Sarah Jane for jumping on at short notice, and in particular to Elijah for giving up his time and sharing his wisdom and his learnings with all of us today. We've got resources on that page you should see on your screen at the moment. We'll get a copy of this recording up and running for you also. Any questions, feel free to send us an email or reach out. I'm sure Elijah is available. You'll probably get him on LinkedIn and to answer any questions and that you might have as well. So with that, I'll say thank you very much. Thanks, Elijah. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Sarah Jane, and happy Christmas to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and always happy to help if anyone wants to reach out. Feel free to.
Great.